So, is Batman kind of a fascist? I discuss this and more on today's episode. In the year of 1986, a comic came out that challenged what it means to be a superhero, what vigilantism truly is, and what it means to be a hero in a fascist police state, among many other things. And that comic was Alan Moore's Watchmen. But in 1986, another comic called The Dark Knight Returns also came out by Frank Miller, and dared to ask questions about the same quality, although it made people much angrier than Watchmen did, apparently. And so, today I'm talking about Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns by, of course, Frank Miller, with art by Klaus Janson and Len Varley, and this came out in 1986, as I said before. For those who don't know, Frank Miller is an American comic book writer and playwright, screenwriter, who is most known for his Batman stories. He wrote The Dark Knight Returns, but he also wrote Batman Year One, which is really good. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the analysis section later. He also wrote Sin City and Daredevil Born Again, which I also love, and several other comic books. And then he also wrote a couple of movies here and there, or the script for a couple of movies here and there. So pretty fascinating author, but he's also one of the more controversial figures in comic books because of his political beliefs kind of influencing what he writes about and how he says certain things. And I definitely have my issues with him, but I also see that he's a very interesting and fascinating writer. And so without further ado, let's talk about The Dark Knight Returns. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So The Dark Knight Returns takes place in Gotham years after Batman's original Batmaning. Frank Miller said he wanted to age Batman up to where he would be in the 80s. And indeed, that is what happens. It seems that Ronald Reagan is president, and Gotham has fallen into chaos and crime again, as there's no Batman around to fight crime, and so you see the rise of various criminal organizations. Batman is retired, and Bruce Wayne is just living his life. And Jim Gordon is retiring at the end of a week. And the leader of the Mutants gang says that they are going to kill Jim Gordon as a message to everyone in Gotham, although they don't appear to be successful. Batman, or Bruce, feels like is trying to not be Batman, but he feels the ultimate call to the Batman mantle, and he puts on the costume, feels a little bit younger in doing so, and begins crime fighting, which draws the news and as well as the police as they become aware of Batman. And you also see the return of Two-Face, who is sort of healed, as psychiatrists say. But as we find out through Batman, like he might look different on the outside, but on the inside, he's still the same old Two-Face, which Batman can kind of relate to because he feels maybe different on the inside as well. Batman ends up fighting the mutants, and their leader almost dies in this fight, but a woman named Carrie, who is the new Robin, shows up and saves him. And then Batman later confronts the mutants again and manages to humiliate them in front of Gotham, thus making them less powerful, but also fracturing them in the process. Superman then shows up. He's been working with the government, and he tells Bruce to quit, otherwise someone is going to force him to take Bruce down, or Batman down, because the world doesn't want superheroes anymore. All the other superheroes have gone away. And you also see a rise in crime through news stories scattered throughout the book, and there's also a war going on around Corto Maltese, part of the Cold War, where the American president is saying, "Oh, we're not gonna cause a war. We're not gonna instigate this," but they appear to be doing just that. And then Joker returns. We see some doctors saying that he's healed, but he shows up on TV and he starts killing everyone with poison gas and whatnot. And Batman is fighting the police at that time, who want him to stop doing Batman things. And then Batman and Joker have a showdown at the fair where Joker shoots a gun, wounds a lot of people, and they make their way to the funhouse where Batman catches Joker and wants to kill him, but stops short of doing that. And Joker just laughs, saying he's still going to make Batman look bad anyway. And Joker kills himself, but makes it look like it's Batman's fault. And from there, Gotham, questions whether or not Batman is a killer or not. And then the Russians proceed to launch nukes because of the Corto Maltese affair. Superman does try to save the day, and he drops the nuke into a deserty type of area, but the electromagnetic pulse from that bomb manages to create a blackout in Gotham. Gotham falls into further chaos, and Batman has to work with the Sons of Gotham in order to bring order to this new anarchy. And at that point, Batman seems like a rogue force, so they send in Superman to finally bring down Batman. There's a big fight where the Green Arrow gets involved, and Batman manages to get the upper hand against Superman, almost killing him, but unfortunately, Batman has a heart attack, which seemingly kills him. We see Batman's funeral, Bruce's funeral, as everyone knows now, but we also see Carrie come to dig up the body, which Superman also sees and doesn't do anything about. But we see that Batman has now started an underground organization dedicated to crime fighting in a way that is very sketchy, because he's already a vigilante, but now he's creating his own sort of gang to deliver his own sort of justice, and that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there is a lot worth talking about with The Dark Knight Returns. One of the ideas that Frank Miller is talking about here is, of course, the return. Batman, Bruce Wayne has retired out of necessity, but finds himself drawn back into the world of superheroing. Whether it's because the government no longer wanted him to do what he's doing, they kind of forced him to act a certain way, and all the other superheroes went along with it. Bruce just decided that he couldn't keep up anymore, and he stopped retiring. Although, as Superman notes, this is a holy war for Bruce, and also it's like he seemed the less willing to stop out of everyone. But as I just mentioned, he feels himself compelled to go back into it. Not only is crime rising in Gotham, but his own inner demons have been gnawing at him for years. We see a very interesting sort of panel where the bat that has sort of been haunting him since childhood, which I believe is just a symbol, an illusion of his failure to help his parents, comes flying back at him in a more aggressive and intimidating manner. And so it's clear that Bruce has never let go of the past, that he's still drawn to fight crime whether it's for his own glory or for trying to avenge his parents in a way that's never really going to happen. But he desires justice, and so he decides to return as Batman. There's a fascinating quote that I would like to read to you from this. Dreaming. I was only 6 years old when that happened, when I first saw the cave. Huge, empty, silent as a church, waiting, as the bat was waiting. And now the cobwebs grow and the dust thickens in here as it does in me. And he laughs at me, curses me, calls me a fool. He fills my sleep, he tricks me, brings me here when the night is long and my will is weak. He struggles relentlessly, hatefully to be free. I will not let him. I gave my word. And that's a very fascinating quote, because it shows the inner turmoil that Bruce is dealing with to struggle against the return, knowing he's always going to kind of give into that maybe he's never really changed. But what's really interesting is the parallels here to year one, because in this one you see the bat flying towards Bruce and him guided by that symbol of the bat. But this is also something you see in another one of Frank Miller's works, the year one, because in it he's somber and depressed over not being able to help his parents as Bruce Wayne. But then the bat flies through the window, getting ever closer to him, and he sees it and he realizes he can become a symbol. So the same symbol that caused him to become Batman in the first place in the Frank Miller continuity again shows up to kind of influence him to be Batman, or to continue the legacy, the holy war, the crusade against injustice that he has done. But in year one, you can see that there's a lot of agony and pain for him to figure out how to avenge his parents. And here it's still there. So in a way, you could say Bruce has been completely consumed by grief, that he's never gotten over the death of his parents, as many people would never get over it, seeing it happen right before their very eyes. But he's been consumed by grief, and ultimately he's been consumed by Gotham. Much in the way that Harvey Dent was consumed, and Joker and Scarecrow and all of them, Bruce has been consumed by Gotham. Gotham is this dark force that doesn't let anyone go, and that includes Bruce Wayne. He's only able to become Batman because he refuses to let go of something from his past, something that deeply haunts him. And you could say like that Batman is a fascist in this, but I don't think Miller is proclaiming Batman here. Rather, if you take year one and The Dark Knight Returns, this is kind of damning for Bruce Wayne. This is kind of a really sad outcome, that Batman is never truly able to help Gotham because he's never truly able to help himself. There's a lot worth considering in that regard, and ultimately, I think if you read the two of them, it paints Bruce as a very sad figure. Another interesting element of The Dark Knight Returns is the violent world that Frank Miller depicts. He does a really good job of building up this world that we already kind of know about, but he's sort of reintroducing us to it 40 years later. It kind of takes place in our own world, whereas in the 30s and 40s, Batman was kind of hidden off from the world in his own fictional Gotham. But here, like Batman is introduced into this real world of Reagan era politics, and it's very fascinating. Much like the real world at the time, Gotham has descended into a state of constant crime. Although America wasn't constant crime, the rate of crime in the 70s and 80s was pretty high. And that's true for Gotham. You see constant news stories of people dying, being murdered, being stolen from, being hurt in some regard. And it's only after Batman shows up again does that crime go down. In a way, Miller is also trying to depict a moral decay, where society's morals have gone down, and the only thing left to fill them is this crime, because nothing's really holding it up anymore. Maybe people have turned away from God or Jesus or some holy figure like Batman, and so all that people have to turn to is crime. You could argue that the Justice League was that symbol of brilliance holding society together. Although that creates a number of other problems, which I'll get to in a few moments. But you could argue that this is what the world looked like to Frank Miller, that he saw the moral decay around him, and it's like, obviously there's nothing there to like hold it up. And what's even worse is that some people are actively encouraging this, like the psychiatrists who advocate for the mentally ill and say they're healed when in fact they're not healed. And more people say, oh, violence is okay, there's nothing wrong with it. Frank Miller is kind of disgusted by these people. I think it's a parody of them in a way. And with all this talk of murder and death, Batman is seen as a necessity. Not only that, Batman must do more than what he's done before, maybe even kill criminals in order to accomplish his overall goal of saving Gotham and possibly even bringing light to this very dark world. But again, that's like commentary on 1980s America, seeing all this moral decay, and he's like, maybe we don't have what we need to thrive anymore. Maybe we've lost something as a country. He even notes like that there used to be like Frank FDR lifting us out of the Pearl Harbor battle. And saying, we can continue as a country, we can continue strong, and like presidents since then haven't really been that way. So again, critiquing the politics of the time too, noting that the people in power aren't really looking out for the people of Gotham. But like what that seems to ignore is the underlying causes of crime. Like, people don't commit crimes because they're eager McBeavers and they're very happy to murder, like the Joker. There's very few actual Jokers out there. People commit crimes because of a lack of resources like food, water, shelter, security, like jobs and whatnot. Like they kill because they don't kill, but like they do crime because they need something that they're lacking. The looters in this story are a prime example of that. Gotham has descended into chaos, so they're just trying to live in some way. And here comes Batman ready to beat the mentally ill and just tear them apart. And in some cases, Miller's arguing that the mentally ill are incapable of change, as I think is what he's trying to say with Two-Face. Like he's changed the psychiatrist have changed the outside, but inside he's still the criminal he always was, and it's impossible for criminals to change, which is a very kind of conservative type message, which makes sense given that Miller was a libertarian, maybe thinking that criminals, need to be handled a bit firmer than they probably were being, especially when people were calling for reform in the 80s and have since then. So it really seems like Miller's kind of ignoring those underlying causes of the crime and just saying, crime is here, we need to do something about it. And you could argue that he's like praising fascism by having this all-powerful man dish out justice. Like what the world needs is a billionaire who can handle people effectively. But at the same time, it also comes off as satire. Like given that Batman is a very sad millionaire man, like it feels like he's satirizing something, both the liberal and the conservative side of things. So, like, especially the way he portrays Reagan here as a goofball who's accelerating the tensions in the Cold War, like you would think that Miller is satirizing something here, but it's really difficult to tell where he leans. And it's given the ending of the story, it really feels like he's arguing for like a fascist leader to rise up. But maybe that's just me misunderstanding the comic book there, but it's still within the text. There are other interesting aspects of this comic. I particularly like the amazing showdowns with Superman. It's pretty rad, and also with the Joker, where they're tearing each other apart at the carnival. Really shows the fervor, especially as Batman has aged and Joker finally wants to be done with everything. It's a pretty cool showdown. And then like the plot structure itself is pretty cool, where you have like Batman doing the fighting interspersed with commentary from the president, or commentary from these debates or these news sort of reels, showing that Gotham is becoming a more hectic, more tumultuous kind of place to be. Really adds to the atmosphere of the story. And again, it does seem critical of power in some way, but it's often difficult to know for sure, like what side Miller is really leaning on here. And I think that's what matters most. Like, do you side with the fascist, or do you side with this being satire? Like, it's important to know, because one is arguing that Batman can be a very useful tool for delivering justice, as long as we give him all the power in the world. And another is arguing that Batman is incapable of doing that because he's a broken man, and that any one man, is probably dangerous to give that one person power, and because it will never truly fix the problems that underlie society. I don't know. It just feels like those are two there, and you don't really know which side Miller is really leaning on. There are other things that I don't really like about this. For one, Batman uses guns here. I think he straight up shoots one of the members of the Mutants at some point, which is really weird. Goes against Batman's creed. I don't care like that. I know that you can like rework Batman however you want, but if it's firmly established that he doesn't use guns because guns killed his parents, he never uses guns. That's it. That's the story right there. There might be other heroes who can use guns, but it's that's not what we're really talking about here. And then also Batman just seems cruel in his old age. He's not as fun or exciting. He's just a mean man who's giving orders to Robin. He's Batman is guided by his the death of Jason in this story. It's mentioned, and yet he recruits another Robin. Like, that seems to be condemning Batman right there, but at the same time it seems like Miller doesn't really care to acknowledge that. And again, it's like he comes off as a very cruel, very malicious kind of Batman, which is what nobody really wants to get behind. And then the art is somewhat meh as well. It feels a bit kind of crusty, in my opinion. Like, it works with Ronald Reagan because it depicts him as sort of melting and kind of fading into the background as sort of a zombie of some sorts who's like terrorizing the heart of America. I don't know. But like for the most part, the art leaves much to be desired. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. I'd say an interesting comic. I don't really know how to feel about it. I'm leaning on the side that I like it, that there are a lot of elements that are good. But whether or not I truly like it, whether or not I feel that it's an exceptional comic, completely depends on the overall message. Is this proclaiming a need for a fascist Batman police state? Or is it merely suggesting that he's, a relic of the past and that relying on one person is dangerous in that way? I don't really know. It feels a little bit muddled and confused at times, and I think that's a worthy criticism of this comic to make. If you have any thoughts on it, or if you think I'm wrong, or if you just have comments on my review here, let me know in the comments below. This is worthy of discussion, I would say. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this if they don't already know, as well as Frank Miller, which I have a feeling if you've read comics before, you probably know who this dude is. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and 1980s travels. Farewell.